Still learning how to navigate this apparently today. So thank you so much. Again, DynamicsCon is brought to you by Doug, Dynamics User Group. We are a community for the Dynamics 365 products, as well as the Power Platform. Um, we are hosting an event in San Antonio, Texas at the Hill Country Resort and Spa on September 14th through the 16th. We have for the event overview, we have 2 full days of content and some networking that's going on, along with welcome receptions for your first night there at the property on Wednesday. Our content this year is we have over 60 confirmed speakers with sessions in each one of the tracks throughout the 2 days. We do have user-focused content, and this you can get all of this for the all-access price of $500 per ticket. And right now we do have a $75 off code. So you can actually get all of this for $425 if you register. And we'll be sure and pop the link to register as well as the code in the chat. Our attendance goal for this is going to be 500 community members, so it is an intimate event for us. The schedule. So like I said, on Wednesday, we've got a welcome reception. And then on Thursday and Friday, we'll have some meals and some more networking along with breakout sessions throughout the course of both days. The venue is at the Hyatt Hill Country Regency Resort and Spa in San Antonio. It is not very far from the airport at all, about a 40-minute drive with traffic. We do recommend Uber or Lyft, and there's lots of activities on site at the property. So if you're bringing your family, you're staying a few days over, there's some different things that you can do. Me personally, I'm super excited about the Flow Rider wave machine, because even though it's going to be September in Texas, I still feel like we might want to get in the water. Also, the venue is very close to area attractions from SeaWorld to Six Flags, also the Riverwalk and the Alamo. I know we have a few fans of the Alamo. I keep hearing that in our communities that folks are excited to see that. And we want to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors that have committed and are helping us put this together and bring it to you. This is just a quick glimpse at our sessions that we have right now in the finance and operations track. We have our Microsoft MVPs listed there, as well as the details. For more information and for the descriptions, feel free to jump over to our website. We've got everything out there. And then if you've got your pens ready, here is the Community 75 code to get $75 off the registration. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Bobby and let him kick off our speakers. Oh, you're on mute, my friend.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I got that out of the way to be the first person to do that. So
I got bingo.
Wait. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So I've taken care of it for everybody. Thanks for being here. We're happy to share this preview. We've been working really hard with the speakers, and we're trying to build what's going to be, I think, a really intimate and fun event that'll seem like kind of just a continuous flow of learning between each session. So that's kind of going to be a really fun part about this particular event. And so I think we're kicking it off with Anne is going to start us off this today with a little bit about her session. So I'll turn it over to Anne here. And then remember, throughout this, if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can get to you and unmute and let you ask your question if you have a question about the session or the event itself. So with that, I'll kick it over to Anne.
Thanks, Bobby. I have a slide that I've put together to just give a quick highlight of what my session is going to be. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name's Anne Krupke. I am a senior solution architect on the Fast Track team at Microsoft. My passions lie in planning, production, especially in costing. And so I'm presenting on the present and future of master planning at DynamicsCon live in September. My session in general aims to answer 4 main questions, which I've put in today on my slide. So first of all, what is master planning? So for anybody who maybe doesn't use the module yet or is looking at just understanding some of the theory behind why do we do planning and how does that help me, especially given some of the things we've seen in today's supply chains. That'll be the first thing we tackle is what is master planning? What does that mean in Dynamics? As well as some different theory about how do we source products? What are the different strategies we might adapt? And how can the system support you in those strategies? The second question, so turning that into how can I use master planning? So what's available to me? What decisions, especially, do I need to be making as I implement it? And how can that support the business processes that I have? What's planning optimization? So I'm expecting to spend a good amount of time talking about planning optimization. The spoiler is planning optimization is the update of what we called master planning in Dynamics. It gives us the better performance by running master planning on a separate service that's now an add-in to Dynamics. And I'll talk about the timeline for all the features in planning optimization, how to prepare your migration journey, and then hopefully have some good Q&A just around concerns or questions with planning optimization. And then lastly, what's new and upcoming? So we are continuing to add to our repertoire for different ways we can support your planning processes in Dynamics. We'll have a highlight on 2 of the big functions that came out within the past year, priority-based planning and DDMRP, or demand-driven master material requirements planning. So we'll have a demo of new functionality, talk about what's on the roadmap, and then leave time for questions and answers about the session. So that is what I'm planning on presenting. Any questions or feedback? Anything I should include that I didn't?
I don't see any questions popping in the chat right now. I just had one curious question more than anything. Do you have any idea how many people that are using D365 and do manufacturing that are not using master planning at all are really, using it in a weird or offbeat way?
With manufacturing specifically, I don't have a number for you. I will say one of the reasons I think this session is important, one of the things that I hope to also talk about when we talk about implementing master planning is I've seen a lot of manufacturers who are planning in Excel when they go into their Dynamics implementation. And they're like, okay, well, Excel is not the right tool. We know that. We want something more intelligent. Let's implement master planning in Dynamics. And one of the great things about it is that it's super flexible and there's all of these options that we can configure, but that can be one of the challenges as well, because if you don't have it configured perfectly or right, you can get stuff that seems really weird, and it can be really hard to trust that the system is going to tell you the right thing. I've seen for myself some customers who, we got an order it told us to order 1,000 units and we really needed 5. That's so crazy. The system, we can't trust it. So they went back to using Excel. Yep. So my goal with this session is to talk about how can you prevent that regression from happening? What can you do? And how can you do that during the implementation instead of after go live, where you're dealing with, hey, this doesn't actually work.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that's kind of what I've seen and experienced firsthand. Worked with, an end user for a long time, and the production crew, they were just afraid to put that, that kind of concerted effort to push through some of the oddities you see and start tweaking the system to get what you want, knowing that at the end of the day, it's going to get you 85% of the way there. It might not always be exactly, but you can keep tweaking it and keep pushing it to get it to where you want it to be. And most people, like you said, get afraid after that first, wonky, return and just, step back to the Excel that they're used to doing.
Right. And Excel is very transparent in how did I arrive at this number, right? You click on the cell, you see the formula, and you can see it in action. Why did I get the result that I got? So to take something that's that clear and trustworthy and then move into a system that's a lot more complex and not always as transparent is it's a big step, and it has a big implication from if I have to order too much, I might run out of space, or I might have a lot of cash tied up in my inventory, especially if you're looking at goods that expire, then I might have to scrap inventory. Or I might be late in orders if I didn't order something soon enough. So there's a huge impact if we do this wrong, but I think that also speaks to the potential for improvement if we do it right.
Yeah. Great. I don't see any other questions, so I think we appreciate you giving us that tidbit. It was awesome. I'm excited to see more about that. Actually, interestingly enough, we just got a question in at the very last minute.
Okay.
Fardalsa is asking, what is the difference between master planning and DDMRP? Aren't they both demand forecasting driven?
That is a great question, and I'm really glad that you asked. So DDMRP is a school of thought around planning. So MRP is a school of thought outside of dynamics. Just think about planning strategies. MRP is a school of thought. DDMRP is an evolution of that school of thought. And master planning is what we in Dynamics call the module that controls forecasting and master planning, or MRP, and now DDMRP. So it's all part of it's all part of our planning strategy. What we've brought in with DDMRP in 10.0.28 is an additional option for how to plan for items. So this might be spoiling a little bit, but normally when we set up planning, we've got period coverage, requirement coverage, min-max, and manual were the four main ones. We added priority-based planning last year, which allows you to prioritize demand by a priority calculation instead of just by the due date of the demand. And now with DDMRP, we're adding a sixth type of coverage group called decoupling point. So we're going to talk about what does that mean, but from what's the difference between master planning and DDMRP? DDMRP is a component of master planning that in Dynamics uses that school of thought from the Demand Driven Institute to pull some more functionality for you in your overall planning strategy. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and it's a good, I guess, just a good, lean into your session. So I'm excited. Like I said, excited to see that full session at the conference. Thanks again, Ann.
Welcome.
I think we're going to move on to Alex Meyer. So Alex, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk to us about your session.
Sure. Thanks everyone for joining today. The session that I am presenting or co-presenting with, I guess, is going to be around looking at least privilege security and how that will help you with your licensing costs as an F&O, and how you can lower your risks and your overall cost of ownership for the F&O product itself. So I'm going to be co-presenting this with Robin from Tillamook, who has went through this process as an end user, and then I'm going to talk to it from the more technical side. So just to give a little bit of background quick about myself, I guess, my name is Alex Meyer. I work for a company called FastPath. We do security audit and compliance reporting across a number of different ERPs. My focus area has been in the Dynamics or Microsoft space in general. All my information is there in the middle. I have Microsoft MVP and BizApps presented at numerous conferences, things like that. My blog and is available as well. But I wanted to do a little bit of interaction here, so we'll see if we can make this work. So I had a couple audience questions quick, just to kind of give you an idea of if this would be the session for you to attend. So if we can, I don't know if we can use maybe a thumbs up in the whatever face you would like to use. So how comfortable are you understanding how Microsoft does user licensing in F&O? Thumbs up if you get it, or laughing emoji or whatever if you don't. I'm just curious.
Alex is referring to up in the upper top of the, if you don't know, in the upper part of the toolbar, there's a reactions button. If you click on that, it'll drop down some reactions for you to choose from. So you can, like says, you can go with the surprise face, like, that was me, or the thumbs up, whatever makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit of a way to get customer feedback. just to user feedback, I guess. So moving on to the next one is user licensing impact discussed during user role assignment changes and security changes in your organization. And so that's a secondary question. If yes, right, you can do a thumbs up. If no, do a face. And then the final one is, do you perform periodic licensing assessments of your F&O environment, looking to ensure that you have correctly licensed your users and instances where you could lower your licensing costs? I asked these three questions because if you answer no to any of these, right, this would be a session that could potentially help you and your company lower your risk and your overall licensing costs dramatically. I've been a part of projects where this idea of implementing least privilege security and licensing costs has saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars a year for overall cost of ownership for a organization. So it makes it a very compelling argument to actually go and do this. But from an agenda perspective, just a couple key points here. We're going to be looking at things like the F&O security model, how licensing is going to be tied to security, and how your changes to security can impact licensing, right? In unintended ways in most cases. The different licensing mechanisms that are currently being utilized within Microsoft and how they kind of interact with each other, and how they, at the end of the day, you can determine what your licensing requirements actually are. And then we're going to look at going in and doing some reporting. What does Microsoft natively have out of the box that you can actually use to help report on this from the AOT or from a programmatic side, as well as what's in the user interface. And then we're going to look at a couple different cases of how you can do this process manually. If you were actually going to go in and you wanted to just use the native tools, how could you actually go in and perform this? And then look at more automated solutions or options for you if you wanted to try to simplify this. And there will be some freebies in here that I've created, some Excel files to help with this process as well, especially if you're moving from AX 2012 to F&O still, if you're trying to make that leap. But we also have some other Excel files to kind of help with that process of being able to very quickly determine what license is going to be required if I assign particular roles, duties, privileges, things like that. And then finally, we're going to, Robin and I are going to go and kind of show how Tillamook went in and actually utilized these concepts, the idea of least privilege, the idea of lowering your costs for licensing within their organization, and kind of the steps that they took to perform that. So some takeaways really quick from this are going to be that you'll have an understanding of user licensing model within F&O. You're going to recognize the association between security and user licensing, and then be able to analyze ways for your company to save money on your licensing costs. So if you're interested in any of those, this is a session to attend. And with that, I can go ahead and take any questions that have popped up, if there are any.
No questions yet, but while we're waiting, I'll just ask again. This is more of a nebulous question. How many companies do you think are analyzing security on a regular basis where they should be? Like, what do you have any percentage idea? Like, hey, out of all the companies running D365, 5% are doing it right, or doing it well, or doing what they should be doing?
Yeah, I think part of that is going to depend on the audit requirements for a customer, right? If you're a private company compared to public, right, you probably have different requirements, and depending on geographical location. But based on the number of companies that reach out to me or Fastpath in general, I would say that this is a hard question to the idea of doing periodic security reviews and trying to lower your access to the minimum requirements for a user is not an easy task within F&O natively. And so a lot of customers either get frustrated or run out of time to actually implement it correctly. And so then you run into situations where they over provision, and then they start having to pay more from a licensing perspective as well. And so I don't know of an exact number. I would say that it's not as much as Microsoft would probably like, and customers too. So,
all right, fair enough. We did have a couple questions pop in. Anything we can look forward to regarding migration from customized AX 2012 R3 to D365 F&O?
So from a customized version of, so I'm assuming you mean customized security. I do go through and I have a Excel file that is available that basically will go down and show you, here was the licensing requirements for a role duty or privilege, and those are just out of the box role duties and privileges, but down to the menu item as well, and saying here's what the license was in AX 2012, here's what the license is in F&O, and you can kind of utilize that to help with that. But honestly, the process, there's a definite lift, move or change in licensing methodology from how AX 2012 does it to F&O, and we'll go over that topic as well.
Great. And then one other question, generally what's a user is educated, how much can you expect to save?
Yeah.
Is it 5%, $5?
Yeah.
What are they looking at as far as the savings?
That's a great question. Obviously it's going to depend on the number of users that you have. The project that I've been a part of where they're saving millions of dollars are large, tens of thousands of users to get to that point. But even if you are, a smaller shop, you can, in most cases, right, there's your set of users that are going to be doing high, high license requirement operations in the system, right? And then there's going to be a larger chunk of users that probably don't need that, but are getting that license because of, the business just says, hey, we're just going to assign it and we're going to go our own way and move on to other things. And so, from a typical, we're probably looking somewhere in the ballpark of we're trying to identify that larger tier underneath it, right? To where you could lower that licensing cost from operations to an activity or team member. And so, you're probably looking at maybe between somewhere 25 to 50% of those types of users are probably over provisioned. And that's probably lowballing that a little bit.
Great. I don't see any other questions coming in. Thanks, Alex. That's a great start. Again, so far, all of our sessions are looking great. I'm good to see or it's fun to see a preview, kind of preview. So excited about this. Next up, we have Connie Thompson from Alltech. So I'll turn it over to Connie to introduce herself and talk about her session.
Let me, I have a slide. Let me get my screen sharing going here. There we go. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for being here today. I'm Connie Thompson. I am this Global Director for MIS Solutions Development and Delivery at Alltech Incorporated in Lexington. Well, I say Lexington, it's really Nicholasville, but at least you know where Lexington, Kentucky is. You'll notice that of the presenters today, I'm the lone user. So I am the person who is working with a team of folks who is helping us to migrate from AX 2012 to Dynamics 365 F&O. I have been in the community for many years. Alltech started working with AX back in 2009, and I have also been working with the Kentucky user group for also many years. Why is the community important? The reason I have chosen to share in this and to present in this event is that I believe that magic happens when you get users that share experiences with an application. They, lessons learned, horror stories, however you want to go about that, and then they collaborate to solve those problems. I'm a firm believer that the user community has huge value, and I look forward to getting us all back together and back engaged. We had the hiatus with COVID, and I am ready for us to get started again. So specifically about my presentation, I am going to be talking about common order processing practices. Say that fast 3 times. When I was thinking about the framework for this, the Lion King Circle of Life came to mind, and Bobby offered to let me hold him up in front of the room, so I'll take him up on that when we get there.
I've got a little lion, helmet with the fur, and I'm ready to play Simba. So can't wait to get there and do it.
Awesome. But basically, the reason that resonated with me is that it's all connected in D365. Sales orders to purchase orders to production orders to transfer orders to quarantine orders. It's all connected. Sales orders can drive purchase orders and production orders. Production orders can drive purchase orders and transfer orders. And then quarantine orders can affect your inventory's availability to ensure that your quality control processes are respected. And so this is going to actually work nicely with Anne's presentation as she's talking about planning. The inputs, of course, are these orders and how they will drive your demand and what you need to produce or to purchase. So based on my experience at Alltech, and that's what I have to draw upon, I'm going to share in large part how Alltech does these processes. So let me tell you a little bit about Alltech. Alltech is a process manufacturer. We make animal feed and nutritional additives for food chain animals. Think beef cattle, dairy cattle, swine, poultry. We sell in over 120 countries from 80 plus legal entities around the globe. Traceability and quality control are critical for us. We batch control all of our finished goods and a good chunk of raw materials. We don't let our inventory go physically negative, which means that the inventory must be available in the system for you to process that sales order or finish that production order. We'll also talk a little bit about configuration and setup, specifically for customers and vendors and items, which can influence how the order process functions. Example, credit limits for customers can prevent shipping an order to a customer that's outside their credit terms. Having approved vendors for items can ensure that you're cutting purchase orders to vendors where you've negotiated the best price, where you have vendors who can meet your quality standards and your delivery timelines. Sales and trade agreements to make sure that the pricing on your sales orders and on your purchase orders are correct. Charge codes to track freight, customs, and duties. And then inventory sites, warehouses, and locations. Some of the other sessions that'll work well with this is there's a session on inventory tracking, which will speak to the traceability that we talked about a moment ago. The intercompany transactions, Alltech does a lot of intercompany transactions. And so I'll touch briefly on that, but there's a whole other session that will talk more about those intercompany transactions. So that's, in a nutshell, what I'm planning to present. Are there any questions?
Nothing's popped up yet, Connie.
Is my screen sharing still work? Sorry.
It is. Yep.
It
We're
is.
still
Okay,
seeing the circle.
awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
I had just one. Not less a question, more of a comment. It sounds a lot like Anne was mentioning. A lot goes into the setup and tweaking to get these to this little circle-like life and ecosystem to run efficiently. So it's one of those things you have to keep working on and keep at to get it to where you want it in an organization. So I think people will be excited to kind of see how you've done it and how they can translate that to their own organizations.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Give it just a second here. I don't see any other questions coming in other than people are excited for you to share the secrets. So
awesome.
Great. Well, I think we can move on to our next preview presenter, and that's Justin Carter.
Hey, thanks, Bobby. Can you
You're
guys hear
welcome.
me all right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. Well, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I heard they were optional. So everybody else, did a great job on theirs. Kind of give you a little overview on who I am and my background. So I got into Dynamics AX and Dynamics RMS, the retail solution, back in 2007 with a company called Blue Horseshoe Solutions. And primarily we were a Manhattan and Lawson Dynamics GP firm back then, and we started our Dynamics AX practice, me and a few other people, and then it obviously took some great turns for us. Our competency at its core was WMS processes, transformations, et cetera, of, existing warehouses, 3PLs, et cetera, inbound, outbound operations. And so, we basically took what we knew in best of breed systems, whether it was AS400 or, Manhattan Scale or WMOS, and built a product within Dynamics AX, and then that got acquired by Microsoft, and then we rewrote it again, and then it got acquired by Microsoft. And so, there have been, all of our implementations have been very, very WMS heavy. And, over the 15 years that I've been with Blue Horseshoe, I've seen all sorts of, now a company of Accenture, got acquired about a year ago. Seen all sorts of stuff. Some of those things when you're in your implementation, it's going to hit you over the head with a pan, thinking that you have all your requirements and then you don't, or you took a certain turn and you probably should have taken a left versus a right. And, how do you handle those? And so I've got kind of a nice little grab bag of tips and tricks, which is really what the session is called, right? It's tips and tricks for your WMS implementation. One of the tricks, I guess you would say, with doing a session called tips and tricks is, what's the audience that you're engaging with? And I know we're going to have a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, whether it's an end user perspective, whether it's a partner, a solution architect, maybe somebody in pre-sales, maybe it's a consultant who's just getting on their feet, right, from an end user to an implementation type role. My overall goal for it is going to be at least everyone taking away 2 items from it, whether it's a tip, which the definition of tip is going to be something that, I've learned or we've learned through experience, or a trick, something where your process is correct, but there might be something extra you can do to really either gain more ROI or increase your efficiency on what you're doing. And so, it's easy when we're in a system like, Dynamics 365 F&O, right? And you're in the SCM product to actually gear all of our business processes into the different modules that we'll see. And you think, oh, WMS, well, that's just my 4 walls of my warehouse, right? Well, there's a lot that you need to start, getting into in the different modules. Product management, are we designing our products as released products, or are we going to create them and then release them out? Are there considerations that could happen if we are a single legal entity, but then we choose to, acquire another company? Now we're integrating their processes in place. Maybe we currently don't use the product filter codes, right? How would we be able to implement that over 50,000 SKUs when we're already live in our system? Are there tips and tricks for that? And I see from Frank, yeah, tips, tricks, and hacks. Yeah, they're very different things. And so, we're going to try to cover all those bases. If anybody has any very specific questions that you'd like me to get to, either put them in the chat or ping me on LinkedIn if you want to think of some, and I'll try to include those as well. Again, my session's just all about adding as much value as possible. A little bit more background into me as well. I've been a Microsoft MVP since 2014, blogging under the pseudonym Dax Dude. Since 2008, 2009. I started as an X++ dev, but did a lot of, functional consulting and then project management, all the way to pre-sales, solution architecture, and now a project director and personnel director. So worn a lot of hats. Could go a bunch of different ways with this, but one thing we're not going to have is a boring time in the session. I think everyone will have a lot of fun. I'm going to shoot for 7 to 10 items, and as you can tell, I talk a lot. So more than likely, fitting in 10 is going to be hard. So I think what we may end up doing is, get to as many as we can. You have the PowerPoint slides you can take with you, but then, if we're going to lunch or something, or maybe it's an after party kind of a thing, right? I'm going to have a lot of stuff pre-prepared that we can dig into in a little deeper of a level. But yeah, superheroes never boring. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, anyways, that's kind of an overview of what it is. It's not going to just be WMS. I want to give you an example of some questions I want to dig into, which, I'm going to try to fit into like 3 or 4 minutes, but could end up being 10. We've all heard product versus product masters, right? What's the appropriate way to handle this? Let's say that you're selling tires, right? Or t-shirts. You could make a good use case for using a product master. If I'm on the retail side, that makes sense. On the product side and the WMS side, oh my gosh, product variants. It's adding another level of complexity. It's very difficult. Great. Well, let's go all products. Well, what happens now if we want to integrate an e-commerce strategy into it and all of our products are products? They're not using product masters. It wasn't in our original scope, and now it's a phase 2 scope. You know, how does this decision over here impact this decision here? And oftentimes when we do these implementations, right, you know, we may start with the WMS and create a backbone. And so those decisions that you make could be correct, but we want to make sure that we're thinking about all the later phases when we do that. And that's all about ultimately creating a very strong solution design doc strategy, right? Where do we want to go? And I'll cover a little bit of that and some stories and such, but you know, the analogy I use, you don't want to start a marathon where you're running it all by yourself and end up on the opposite side of town, or else you're going to be doing 2 marathons in one day if you don't have your phone with you. So yeah, that's kind of the approach we'll take. And that's it.
Hey, thanks, Justin. And just as a side note too, Justin's been really involved in the local UG here. We're both in the Denver, Colorado area, and when I joined the UG back in 2014 here, and we, you know, it was pretty much Justin and I and one other customer. So we built it up to a pretty big community, and we're trying to get back to, like Connie mentioned before, just excited to kind of get that rolling again here and across the country. So we're happy to see these events and these local events popping up, and the support we're getting from folks like Denise and Molly are, you know, it's a long way to getting that going. So thanks again, Justin.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and to everybody, thanks again to Ann and Alex and Connie and Justin. It was a pretty good preview of just a, you know, a third to a quarter of the sessions we'll have for the FNOP folks at DynCon Live in September. So we're excited again about not just these sessions, but all of them and how they're working together to provide a story that should give everybody a good look at the entire system by the end of the 2-day period. So I'll turn it back over to Denise and Molly to give us a wrap up on the Doug side, and
Great. Well, Bobby, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that joined us today. We're really excited about these sessions and the content that we have put together, and how information rich it is for our users and for the community as a whole. And we just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Bobby, thank you for being my MC.
of course, yeah.
You did a great job, and so did all of the speakers. In the meantime, don't forget, feel free to register using that Community 75 code. That's going to get you $75 off. And we look forward to seeing all of you in San Antonio.
Yep. It's going to be a great time.
It is. Certainly is. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.